February 15th, 2026, Windsor Castle. At precisely 10:17 a.m., Greenwich Mean Time, the Privy Council Office issued an unprecedented emergency decree confirming that King Charles III, acting on the unanimous advice of the Royal Child Preservation Council, has invoked Section 3 of the Sovereign Safeguard Protocol, immediately suspending Meghan Markle's parental authority over Lady Lilibet. This seismic constitutional move, authorized under the Royal Descendants Emergency Welfare Clause, follows a 72-hour evidentiary review that concluded the child's physical safety, educational continuity, and emotional stability are under direct and escalating threat. The decree, read aloud by the Lord Chamberlain in the Crimson Drawing Room, states, "Effective immediately, all custodial and representational decisions regarding the minor descendant Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor shall be temporarily vested in a court-appointed guardian, jointly approved by the UK Department for Children and Families and the California Superior Court. The Duchess of Sussex is hereby ordered to surrender the child's passport, cease all commercial engagements involving the minor, and grant full access to Royal Child Welfare investigators by 5 p.m. Pacific Time today." The decision marks the first time in modern British history that the Crown has legally intervened to suspend the parental rights of a royal spouse, triggering an instantaneous transatlantic legal firestorm. Sources within Kensington Palace confirm that the motion was personally championed by Princess Anne, who presented a 48-page dossier titled Operation Guardian, a compilation of sworn testimonies, medical reports, school records, and covert surveillance logs gathered over the past 4 weeks. "This is not a family dispute," a senior palace aide told the BBC moments after the announcement. "This is a sovereign rescue mission. The evidence we have would compel any child protection agency in the world to act." According to confidential palace documentation obtained by The Telegraph, the Privy Council's emergency session, which began at 2 a.m. on February 15th, centered on 3 catastrophic findings. First, medical records from the Cedars-Sinai Pediatric Wing in Los Angeles showing that Lilibet, age 5, was diagnosed with acute situational anxiety and performance-induced exhaustion on January 28, 2026, after logging over 220 hours of branded content filming in Q4 2025, a schedule equivalent to a full-time adult work month. Second, a leaked contract between Archewell Audio and a Dubai-based production house, Caliphate Media, dated December 10, 2025, which lists Lilibet as the primary voice talent for a 12-episode children's wellness series, with a clause stipulating a minimum of 25 hours of recorded content per month. The deal, worth an estimated $3.8 million, was signed by Meghan's business manager without the consent or knowledge of Prince Harry, as confirmed by his sworn affidavit filed on February 10th. Third, and most damning, sworn testimony from a former live-in nanny, referred to in court documents as Witness A, who stated that Meghan explicitly instructed staff to prioritize Lilibet's media training over her kindergarten curriculum, and that the child was frequently administered melatonin supplements to regulate sleep around shooting schedules. Princess Anne, who chaired the evidence review, delivered a televised statement from St. James's Palace less than an hour after the decree was issued. Her face was a mask of grim resolve. "Let me be unequivocal," she began, her voice cutting through the silence. "The Crown does not lightly step into the realm of parental sovereignty, but when a child of this house is being treated not as a human being, but as a human brand, when her education is sidelined, her health is compromised, and her childhood is monetized in 15-minute increments, we have not just a right, but a sacred duty to intervene. This is not about Meghan Markle. This is about Lilibet Diana, and as of today, her well-being is the Crown's paramount concern." Prince William, appearing at a previously scheduled engagement at the Royal Marsden Hospital, was surrounded by reporters as he departed. He stopped, turned to the cameras, and delivered a statement so brief it immediately flooded social media. "Some lines cannot be crossed," he said, his eyes ice blue and unwavering. "My niece deserves a childhood, not a contract. The monarchy will ensure she gets one." He then entered his vehicle without another word, leaving a press pool scrambling to broadcast the 9-second clip that would soon be viewed over 20 million times. But what happened next stunned even the most seasoned royal observers. At 12:45 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, the UK's National Crime Agency, in coordination with Interpol's Human Trafficking and Child Exploitation Division, issued an international alert flagging the financial transactions linked to Lilibet's commercial contracts. According to the alert, over $5.2 million had been funneled through a series of shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg, ultimately traced to a private trust fund in Zurich, registered under the name Lilibet's Legacy, LLC. The sole signatory on the account was Andrew Meyer, Meghan's former business manager, and a person of interest in a separate SEC investigation into securities fraud. This isn't just unethical, a senior NCA source told Sky News. This is a potential case of financial exploitation of a minor on an industrial scale. The money was moving, but none of it was going into a protected trust for the child's future. It was being used as working capital for Archewell's expansion. And then came the most explosive revelation of all. At 3:30 p.m., Greenwich Mean Time, the Daily Mail published what it described as a leaked email chain from Meghan Markle to her PR team, dated February 3, 2026. In the emails, a sender identified as MM writes, "Lily's fear of cameras is a narrative problem. We need to rebrand it as sensitivity, not anxiety. Hire a child coach to desensitize her. The Dubai deal depends on her being camera ready by March. She doesn't have to like it, she just has to do it." The recipient replies, "Understood. We'll frame it as building resilience. Should we increase the melatonin dosage before shoots?" The pediatrician said it's safe for situational use. The alleged response from MM is a single line. "Do whatever it takes. This is the legacy." The gravity wasn't just legal, it was existential. For the first time, documentary evidence appeared to link Meghan directly to the deliberate medical management of her child for commercial gain. Buckingham Palace has not authenticated the emails, but a spokesperson confirmed that the correspondence is now part of the official evidence bundle submitted to the California Superior Court. "This isn't parenting," a high-ranking royal aide whispered to a Reuters correspondent, their voice trembling with fury. "This is factory farming a human being." As the institutional machinery ground into motion, the emotional heart of the crisis ruptured into public view, the visceral, haunting contrast between the two Sussex children. Lilibet, overexposed, scheduled, and performing. Archie, now 7, had vanished entirely. School attendance records obtained by palace investigators showed he had not set foot in his Los Angeles elementary school since November 2025. Neighbors in Montecito, speaking anonymously to The Sun, reported seeing the boy only at night, being walked briskly by a bodyguard, and that he never smiles, never waves, just stares at the ground. It was Princess Catherine who pierced the silence with a single devastating act. On the afternoon of February 14th, she was photographed leaving Windsor Chapel after a private service. In her arms, she carried a simple, worn-looking teddy bear. A palace source later confirmed to the Times that the bear was a gift from the late Queen Elizabeth II to Archie on his first birthday, a gift Catherine had personally retrieved from the royal archives and was attempting to send to California through diplomatic channels. She wanted him to know he is not forgotten, the source said, that somewhere, someone still sees him as a child, not a collateral. The image of Catherine, the future queen, clutching that small, forlorn bear, broke the internet. It was a silent scream of maternal anguish that no press release could ever match. Hashtags like #WhereIsArchie and #SaveLilibet surged to the top of global trends, with millions demanding action. Fan-made videos juxtaposed clips of a beaming young Prince Harry playing with William at Balmoral against the described reality of his own son, a ghost in his own home. Diana's legacy hung in the air like smoke. Commentators recalled her famous 1995 BBC interview, "I want my boys to be hugged, to be real." Now, her granddaughter was allegedly being coached not to cry on camera, and her grandson had disappeared from the world. The irony was brutal. The woman who fled the crown to protect her children had, in the eyes of the institution, become the very thing she once feared, a manager of human assets. The legal and social consequences began to cascade with terrifying speed. By 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time on February 15th, the California Department of Child and Family Services confirmed it had opened a formal inquiry into the welfare of both Sussex children based on the evidence provided by the UK Privy Council. Netflix, which had a $100 million overall deal with Archewell, announced it was indefinitely pausing all projects involving the Sussexes, citing unforeseen contractual and ethical complexities. Disney+, Apple TV+, and Spotify followed suit within hours. In Montecito, a fleet of black SUVs was photographed entering the gates of the Sussex mansion, believed to be agents from the California Superior Court serving the custody suspension order. Public opinion, measured by a Snap YouGov poll, showed a staggering 89% of Britons supported the King's intervention, with 84% believing Meghan should face criminal charges if the allegations were proven. In the US, sentiment was more divided, but a Reuters/Ipsos poll found 67% of Americans agreed that the commercial use of young children by influencer parents should be regulated. Inside the monarchy, a formidable unity solidified. King Charles, who had remained at Sandringham, signed 2 additional orders. The first, freezing all royal grants and allowances still flowing to Harry and Meghan since their 2020 exit. The second, authorizing a £2 million emergency fund for the legal and protective costs associated with securing the children's welfare. He was reported to have told Prince William, "We failed Diana in life. We will not fail her grandchildren in this." Princess Anne and Prince William now operate as a seamless, ruthless executive duo. Anne handles the constitutional and legal blitzkrieg. William serves as the public face of moral authority, his every clipped statement a nail in the Sussex's coffin. Catherine works the shadow network, diplomatic back channels, whispered pleas to mutual friends, the quiet, relentless labor of care that happens far from the cameras. Meghan's camp, according to insiders, is in utter disarray. Her high-powered LA law firm, Laveley & Singer, reportedly withdrew from representing her in the custody matter, citing irreconcilable differences in strategy. Her Instagram account, which boasted 15 million followers, has been flooded with angry comments and is now believed to be managed by a bot filtering service. The As Ever brand website is offline. The Archewell office in Santa Barbara appears shuttered. And Harry? The once rebellious prince is now described by sources as a broken man, trapped in a gilded cage of his own making. He is reportedly staying in a rented cottage on the outskirts of Montecito, separated from the main house, seeing the children only under court-supervised conditions. His attempts to regain custody are now fully aligned with the Crown's intervention, a stunning reversal that paints him not as a villain, but as a desperate father finally grasping for a lifeline thrown by the institution he once rejected. As dusk fell on February 15, 2026, Princess Anne stood once more before the cameras at Buckingham Palace. This time, she was not alone. Flanking her were Prince William and Princess Catherine, a united trinity of Windsor power. Anne held a single sheet of paper. The Royal Child Preservation Council has just received confirmation from the California Superior Court, she announced, her voice echoing across the courtyard. The temporary guardianship order has been granted. As we speak, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor is in the protective care of court-appointed officials. She is safe, she is out of the spotlight, and for the first time in over a year, she is playing, not for a camera, not for a brand, but for herself. She paused, allowing the magnitude of the statement to settle. William placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Catherine, standing slightly apart, allowed a single, silent tear to trace a path down her cheek, a moment of raw humanity captured in 1,000 photographs. "This was not our first choice," Anne continued, her gaze piercing the lens. "It was our last resort. But when the choice is between protocol and a child's soul, this family, this institution, will choose the soul every single time. The age of exploitation is over. The era of protection has begun." She folded the paper, turned, and walked back into the palace, the great doors closing behind her with a final, echoing thud. Across the world, headlines screamed the news. Pundits debated the legal precedent, lawyers prepared for years of appeals, but in a quiet room in California, a little girl was finally asleep, without a schedule, without a camera, without a performance waiting for her at dawn. The Crown had drawn a line in the sand not for power, but for a 5-year-old's right to a bedtime story, and in doing so, it had rediscovered its purpose not in centuries of tradition, but in the simple, fierce act of saving a child from the market. The institution may have been slow to act, but once it moved, it did so with the full, terrifying force of 1,000 years of sovereignty. And the message was clear. You can monetize your titles, you can sell your story, you can weaponize your trauma, but you will not auction off a childhood on the Crown's watch.